All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to this webinar, this session, this online experience, as I like to call it. It's really, really nice to be joined by people from all around the world. My name is Miguel Neves. I work for my own company, Miguel7.com, but that's really not important. I have with me 5 esteemed guests and event professionals from all around the world. And I'm going to start with James, who's going to do a lot of the talking next after me, who's from the University of Westminster. Hello, James. Welcome to the event. You are on mute, so if you want to say a quick hello, please do unmute yourself. And then I'm going to go, I guess, from east to west. We have Ping, who's joining us from Beijing, I believe, from China. Hello, Ping. It's 10 o'clock in China, I believe, right? Yeah. Nice to have you with us. Thank you for being on so late. Thank you so much. Paula, you're in Helsinki, right, in Finland?
5 p.m. here.
Can you give us a hello in Finnish, please?
Hyvää iltaa. Oikein mukava nähdä teidät kaikki.
Well, thank you very much. It's very nice to have you here. Excellent. And then I think I'll go to Derek, if I'm not mistaken, who is in Washington, D.C., I believe?
Correct. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
What time is it where you are, Derek?
It's 10 a.m. Eastern
Excellent.
Standard.
Perfect. And Aaron, I believe, in Toronto, Canada. So we have a truly multinational panel. I am in Denmark. James is in the UK. So we're all in different countries. That is amazing. Aaron, how are you?
Good morning, eh?
No stereotypical there at all. So really the reason we're here today, James really brought us together. Just to give everybody a bit of context, we ran an event, Global Meetings Industry Day, on April the 14th. I was part of a team of around 50 event professionals that did a Global Meetings GMID Goes Virtual event. We had upwards of 12,500 people online participating in a celebration, or at least a gathering of event professionals from all around the world. The event professionals who are, I don't think I need to tell anybody, in a bit of a crisis at the moment. I think a lot of the world is in crisis, but events are definitely in that box. And coming out of that, we did some polls during that event. We did some interaction. And then James got involved, and we actually managed to use a lot of that audience to carry out some research. And James has since published a report that I will actually share the link to. If you'd like to download the report, it's there below. I'll bring that up later as well. But James is going to be talking a little bit about how this all came about and giving us a little bit of context on this report. So James, thank you for bringing us together, and I'll hand it over to you, and maybe you can give us a little bit more context and talk us through some of what you found in this report.
Yeah, Miguel, thank you very much, and welcome everybody, and thank you very much to all the panelists that are involved in this event. The report really was done to try and see where the events industry was at a specific period of time a couple of months ago, and the kind of predictions for the future. And we are running polls today, and if you go to slido.com and use the hashtag UOW, you will be able to ask questions and you'll be able to participate in those polls so we can gather more data on the business challenges of COVID-19. So the first thing that we looked at in the report was demand generally, to see where that was going. And relying on research done by the OECD, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, as well as the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, they're all predicting a recession for the final 3 quarters of 2020 and the beginning of 2021. So I'll go through some of the highlights here of the report, just to give you a flavor of what we'll be discussing today. There's 3 specific areas that we will be talking about. The first one is on staffing, because obviously at a time like this, we're looking at furlough schemes, we're looking at redundancies, we're looking at all sorts of ways that employers have to run their companies at reduced cost levels in order to survive. And in the report, we did find that only, this was in just after GMID, that only 42% of companies had made any staff changes, which is interesting. But this picture would have changed now, so that will be something we're polling on. The other thing, 63% of people that responded to that survey said that staffing costs will need to be reorganized over the next 6 months. Interestingly, on staffing, but also related to the business premises theme, which is the next one, was home working. So we found that 82% of people felt working from home was efficient, and 68% felt that working this way in the future was acceptable, which brings us to the next area of business premises. And do we need the office space that we're in? So in the survey back then, we found that 42% of people that were responsible for business premises or knew about the decision-making said they would consider downsizing office spaces within 2020, with mortgage holders looking to share office spaces with companies or freelancers. And then the last area we looked at was capital management, and we asked about bank loans. We looked at how people had borrowed from governments, how people had borrowed from banks, but then there were also, because this is an international sample of respondents, we also found that 14% of the respondents was saying that government-backed loans did not exist in their country. So we're looking at more low-income economies. If you want to pick, for example, Mali, Niger, Costa Rica, and places like that. So lastly, only 12% indicated that they'd be taking out commercial bank loans. So that was an interesting set of figures. And what I've done today is I've brought these expert event profs together, and we're going to be talking first of all to Ping to find out what's happening in China. So I'll hand back to you, Miguel.
Yeah, thank you. Ni hao in Chinese, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And China now is in its post-epidemic period. Since the outbreak of COVID-19, Chinese professionals in tourism and MICE industry have marked themselves a bunch of jobless people. It seems to me everyone is involved in e-commerce and selling something online, such as food, cosmetics, diet products, all kinds of commodities you can imagine or beyond your imagination. And we call this phenomenon self-rescue, which is still going on at this moment. And on the 14th of July, when the second wave of COVID-19 in Beijing was under control, the Ministry of Culture and Tourism announced that the travel industry could return to operation, and the trans-province travel was allowed under the conditions that the local government's rules had to be followed. The whole industry was so excited, and the industry colleagues joked, and they are crying with joy. And then we see lots of advertising for domestic tours. Most of them are short tours for all events for families, children, or tailor-made tours for individual tourists. Beijing Culture and Tourism Bureau announced on the 20th of July that Beijing could resume trans-province travel. On the 19th and the 23rd of July, separately, Beijing announced the conferences and sports events under 500 attendees could be organized. There is no fixed timetable. Every province or area makes its own decision to lift the ban for domestic travel or events, depending on the local epidemic situation. Up to July 20, about 30 provinces or municipalities had lifted the ban. From WeChat, we can see every day our industry peers share information about their local events, from which we can tell it is hardly to earn reasonable profits at this moment. But it is inspiring. Both inbound and outbound business are impossible at this moment. Event companies for inbound and outbound business and try to develop the domestic market for high-end travel and events. To be honest, I'm not quite sure about the result. Virtual and hybrid events such as webinars, trainings, government or company meetings are very popular at this moment. Quite a lot of domestic academic conferences are moved from offline to online or turned to hybrid meetings. Some DMCs and the PCOs decide to focus on the development of the virtual events and hybrid events, which is definitely the trend of the future events industry. Another fact will impact the MICE industry here in China is that the Ministry of Finance of China has just declared that the government budget will be cut about 50%. In China, many conferences or events are sponsored or partly sponsored by the government, especially the international ones. The budget for the government conference, training, forum, exhibition will be strictly controlled. China Star, my company, as a DMC and PCO, we are now focusing on virtual events and hybrid events. We have a couple of online conferences ahead this year. China Star's main business actually is for inbound MICE market, but at this moment, there is no any sign for the recovery of inbound MICE industry. So if we want to survive, we have to diversify our business. This is what we are doing now. Meanwhile, people are thinking what we are going to do if we have to coexist with COVID-19 as a new norm. We have to change ourselves to adapt it, not to wait for the miracle. This time it's like a phoenix reborn from nirvana. So our normal life is disturbed now and then by the cases sporadically appeared here and there, such as what happened in Xinjiang in the northwest China, Dalian in northeast China, and Fuzhou located at the southeast coast of China. So almost everything mentioned in the survey by Dr. J.M. Morgan is happening in China. So for me, it is very meaningful to join this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ping. It's really interesting to get this vision and this, what it looks like in China right now. So if you've just joined us, we are talking about COVID-19, about the business practices around COVID-19, and we're talking about a piece of research that Dr. James Morgan, who is on the webinar, has put together based on, I think, something like 600 or 700 respondents from all around the world. James, maybe you can correct me if I am wrong, but it is a pretty decent sample size that we're also looking to, to develop and improve. I just wanted to share a few of the comments that we've had so far, which is always a lot of fun. First of all, a nice big happy birthday, hip hip hurrah from Holland for Paula, who is one of our panelists. Paula, happy birthday from everybody and from a few of the people watching. David also says, great to see this group of event professionals from around the planet join. Excellent. Thank you, everybody who's putting comments on Facebook. We have a hello from Sally in Malaysia and a hello also from Dorit in Israel. That is absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. If you have any other, tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to hear in the Facebook comments. So please do add them in and we'll try to recognize as many professionals as we can who are joining us today. And we're going to go over to Derek now, who's going to talk a little bit about staffing. But before we go there, I wanted to go back to the polls because I want to make this as interactive as possible. And I know James has prepared a few polls for us. And I want to go back to the first one, which is just a little bit of fun, just to get you started on the Slido side of things and where the interactivity is. So I'm going to put that on the screen. All you have to go is to go to slido.com and then type in the hashtag UOW or you can just scan that QR code. And we'd love to know why you love online meetings. And the multiple choice answers are there in front of you. I'm not going to say them out loud. This is just a little bit of fun, but let us know and contribute. And also, this is a way for you to get used to using Slido. We'll get a few more questions and a few more, I guess, a little bit more serious polls later on in the session today. So here it is. We want to make sure that this is as interactive as possible. Excellent. I see some responses coming in, and you can keep answering the polls even when they're not on the screen. So it's always a lot of fun. You'll also notice in the same system in Slido, we are collecting questions, and we will be taking those questions later on in the session. So please do enter those questions as they come to your head. You're listening to a speaker, you want to ask something about what Ping sent from China, please put that in now, and we'll you can also upvote other questions that you see in there, and we'll make sure to get to those more popular ones, or as many as we can throughout the show. So I'm going to stop talking. I've been talking a lot. Derek, we're going to head over to you. Thank you so much to everybody who's contributing to the poll. So over to you, Derek, in Washington, D.C.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here. So I have the honor of speaking on the most important part of any organization, and that's its employees. When we think about the individuals that help drive our resources, help drive our objectives and missions within the scale of meetings and events, it's the people that work within the scale of our organizations. And many of them within the events industry are being furloughed and let go. When we use furlough, the term furlough, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a commitment that these individuals will return. And what we're seeing primarily in the US is this public health crisis of COVID-19 has really exposed the neglect of some of the marginalized communities within the scale of our nation, and they're taking the toll disproportionately when it comes to these furloughs and unemployment inopportunities, and they're affected most, especially again these low-income communities. Over 40 million people have applied for unemployment here in the U.S. And again, a lot of these individuals are frontline workers within the meetings and events world. They're when you go to restaurants, they're your servers. When you go to hotels, they're your frontline staff members. And again, as we think back to presenting ourselves in the best light, showing our communities the advantages of the missions and objectives of truly our associations and the industry, our frontline workers are the ones that truly make the impact. And these are the individuals that are being impacted the most within the scale of unemployment. For those individuals that still do have their jobs, we're seeing a lot of organizations needing to change their staffing strategies as it relates to remote working. And working from home has been a key factor in this pandemic, in ensuring that the employees of organizations have the tools and resources to be effective in their homes. What that does is it takes them out of the office environment. It creates a different dynamic in communicating with colleagues, with clients, and to effectively be able to move an organization forward and impact the communities in which we touch. That communication and those resources need to be amplified in a way to support the individual within the realm of their home environment. As I mentioned, the majority of businesses are impacted by this social distancing realm, whether they be for the good or the bad. The majority, unfortunately, falls in the latter category. What employees are doing now is investing more in the individuals that are currently within the realm of their environments and their organizations and their staffing pools. Because with letting people go, you don't let go of the work. You need to redistribute it. And as you think of the work that we all do within the realm of our own responsibilities, and we think of the work that our fellow colleagues are doing, many of us are having to then take the weight and move forward with initiatives that we were not previously engaged in. And what does that mean? It means that we need to equip ourselves with additional tools, knowledge within areas that we may not be fluent in. And the biggest example of this I can give is the eye-opening experiences and the move to truly embracing virtual events. Many planners, business event strategists within our world have been very much able to plan and work within the confinements of in-person events and experiences. Now we need to open our minds to the ideas and the opportunities that lie within the virtual realm. Many planners don't have the experience, the knowledge, or even the desire to plan events that are now virtual. However, it's our responsibility and the responsibilities of our organizations to invest in the employees' knowledge, and so that we can help elevate the initiatives within the scales of the environments in which we work.
Derek, thank you so much for that. Do you need a few seconds to wrap up? We'd love to move on to some polls around this specific topic that we'd like to get some audience response.
Definitely.
Well.
No, the last thing that I'll say is we have an opportunity within this space, within all of our organizations and businesses, to reinvent ourselves and to invest in the ideas of evolving our industry as a whole.
Thank you so much. That is really, really useful. So we're moving on to a couple of polls around this very important topic. So as we said before, if you'd like to use Slido, you can open up a new tab on your computer, or if you have a phone handy, you can even scan that QR code, or go to slido.com and type in UOW. We'd love to hear if your company has taken any of these actions on staffing in the last 12 weeks. So we're talking here about redundancies, making furloughing employees, reducing work hours, and if created job shares. We'd love to know, people watching, if they've been part of, if these actions have been taken within your company. We know that they may not be taken by you, they may be taken by someone else, but if you've seen these happen in your company, please help us by contributing to this continued bit of research. I don't know if you want to comment, James or Derek. We're seeing quite a lot, and this is multiple choice, but you can enter as many as you want. So made staff redundant. Unfortunately, there's a lot of that, but the most has been reduced working hours for employees.
Yeah, definitely. We don't want to let people go. So how else can we solve the problem in keeping them?
Absolutely. And there's still a lot of work to be done, right? Work doesn't necessarily stop, but we still need to get that done, but it may be a different type of work, right?
Exactly.
Excellent. Okay. And I'd like to move on to the next poll now. So we had 32 respondents, 33 now. Thank you so much for that. And the next one is really about what you've done about training and upskilling yourself. And at least in my personal experience, and I don't know about anybody else on the panel, but I felt like when we went into lockdown, there was this, people felt like they had a lot of free time and suddenly kind of started all these courses and did all these things. And now I feel like I'm busier than ever. I'm like, I'm a little envious of people say, oh, I'm now learning a different language, or I'm learning how to program or something like that. That hasn't really happened in my experience, but I'd love to hear from the audience. Please, if you're watching us right now, do contribute to our polls. They really make it much more interesting for us and the guests to have a kind of interactive conversation. During lockdown, have you personally undertaken any training or upskilling? And we're seeing, yes, free courses, sessions that I voluntarily joined. I think it's really interesting that free definitely becomes very high up there. James, is this what you expected to see? Was there any experience that you've seen that is being kind of replayed here in the polls?
Interestingly for me, what I don't see is many employers actually investing in their staff during this period when they've not got a lot to do. So going on a course is not considered breaking your furlough rules. And I think that there are a lot of companies out there that do have cash reserves or good cash flow. And I was expecting to see more investment in employees and training. But we also see the resilience of our professionalism in the industry by people going, well, look, I haven't got anything to do. I'm going to go and upskill myself. And also resilience as far as people actually running courses, running sessions, putting on events for event professionals, lots of thought leadership stuff going on out there. So I would say that our industry is, in terms of educating and upskilling people, is really pretty good.
Excellent. Just going to put a comment on the screen. I don't know who 71Colsey is. That is the username on YouTube, but saying, will the results of the Slido polls be made available? Yes, absolutely. We'll share a nice infographic with all the results afterwards in the comments and in the thank you email, so you'll have access to this data as well. And I'd like to move now to Aaron, who's going to be talking a little bit about premises. Aaron from First Element, over to Toronto, Vancouver, and I would also like to say, if there's any comments to anybody watching on YouTube, please do add them in YouTube, not just where you're watching from, but if you have comments on the questions or on the topics that we may not be covering adequately, please add them, and we'd love to have your comments also be discussed here with the group. So over to you, Aaron.
All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening all around the world. And you know, here in Toronto, we're working very hard to stay safe, and I hope everyone watching is staying safe as well. An opening note: whether you're going out into your premises or into the community, please make sure you're wearing your mask and staying safe, and making sure you're sanitizing your hands. So that's an opening message. I was really fascinated to get an opportunity to talk about business premises, because I think for the creative services industry, this is something that's so undervalued and so underrated. And while we have spent a lot of time in our industry looking at the opportunity to pivot, the core of our industry, no matter what section you are, really is in live events and producing live events for the most part. And so those tendencies tend to carry, at least for my company and the people who I've talked to locally in Toronto, tend to carry into the office environment as well. And so when we look at the report and we can see that while a great majority of the people feel like they are using their business spaces efficiently, we're looking at about 66% of those people. Those people also think that they would consider downsizing their premises in the future. And so one of the disturbing trends in this area for me will be the idea that event professionals as a whole and creative services professionals don't necessarily consider all of the data when they make decisions, unlike major corporations like Google or Microsoft, where they know that working online can work for them because they're built to be online. I think creative professionals are built to be very interactive and very personable. And so those findings are interesting, because I think that while employees will consider an efficient working practice at almost 83% for people to be at home, I think there's, you know, what I've developed is kind of 4 S's as to why I think we should be concerned. What we have seen in talking to some of our clients is that they are concerned about the opportunity that online brings for silos. And so of the past few years, we believe that premises has been important because we talk to clients about bringing in various different professionals into the conversation. So just because a marketing or an advertising person is working on a project, they may benefit from the knowledge of an engineer in the building. And so we believe that those things are going to be really hindered, and organizations are now going to be stuck in silos, as will creative services companies, where decor people may just talk to decor people, production people may just talk to production people, and so you're going to lose that element of kind of one vision. The other thing, the second S to me, is that moment of serendipity. So as a creative professional, we know that serendipity is that thing where you get off the phone with a client, you're walking down the hallway, something happens, you end up talking to someone else, and bam, just like that, you've got this unbelievable idea. And Premises allows us to do that. It allows us the opportunity to kind of reach out and talk to people. And so that serendipitous moment where your idea mixes with someone else's idea and it gets really exciting, and you run to the boardroom and you start jotting things down, that's really that moment that's going to be missed. The third S is spontaneity. I think that when we look at things, how many times have you walked to someone else's office or gone up a floor or down a floor, or even to, another company that's in the same building, and you've created that spontaneity where you knock on the door and you say, hey, do you have a minute? Or you send a quick note down, can I come see you in 5 minutes? Those things will go away, because the truth of the matter is it's an incredible pain to try and schedule into someone's calendar video time. And organizations like Google have created this thing where you can just send an instant notification that you want to meet. But if someone's not sitting in front of their computer, that's going to become challenging. The fourth S about Premises is salary. And so organizations now are going to talk about scaling back salary, because people don't necessarily need to come to the office. They don't need to spend time commuting. They also don't have that time to kind of get away from their desks. And so salary is now going to become an issue where organizations, I think, are going to try and scale back there as well. So the one major component to this that I'd like to wrap up with is the idea that we are by nature a group of people who need to be in front of other people, talking to other people, and ideas really are generated and cooked around the sharing and ping-ponging of ideas in person, that excitability when you see it on someone's face and you put it up on the board and someone adds to it. And so I think that while I understand the financial ramifications of keeping Premises, I also think that our industry really, really needs to be on top of the idea that Premises allows for a lot of that creativity that creative professionals are yearning for, and allows for all of that creativity that we're now complaining about doesn't necessarily exist online. So I think we need to find hybrid ways to do this, maybe shared spaces, but ultimately I think Premises will continue to be incredibly important when you take the financial ramifications out of it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Aaron. I think that was a very succinct and great answer. I think you have the basis there for an hour session maybe, or at least a white paper. So thank you for sharing that with us. We seem to have lost James, but that's the great thing about having 6 people on a session. If somebody drops out, we can keep going. So James prepared a couple of polls. So I'm going to share the screen with the polls now. Abby, I think if you can move over to the polls on the Premises, excellent. So first poll is, what action has your company taken on controlling business premises costs? So these answers are a little bit deep, so have a read through them. And if you can share anything about how your company is taking action on controlling business premises costs, please do so in the poll here. We'd love to hear. If you have other views or disagree, also please share in the comments. We saw here, Aaron, Sven giving you a shout out there. Aaron,
that's wonderful. And I just wanted to say that, and hey, Sven, the idea is that, when we look at this, a lot of people are saying not applicable. And I would imagine, part of the challenge in our industry in general is there are a lot of freelancers or solopreneurs, as they like to be called, who really didn't have the problem of working in the office. But I know a lot of large business owners are saying now that they're just finding that the level of creativity has really dipped off. And I think it's interesting that the second rated, which is now really moving up the ladder, would be the not changing anything, which, we need to be in front of people and feel that energy. So I think that's a great trend, and hopefully we continue with that.
Great to hear. Excellent. We have around the 32. I think we've had 33 in most polls. So I want to move on to the next poll, which is still on the same topic. And it's really about if you rent the business premises, no matter if it's a short or long-term lease, have you ever received help from your landlord? So really what we're saying is we think that maybe some companies will have some difficulties paying the rent or getting that covered. And is there help out there, or do you have a nice landlord or landlady who kind of gives you a little bit of a break, or are you happy to reduce some of those payments or delay those payments?
Now in Canada, the government was willing to take on 75% of the rent for a 3-month period, as long as the landlord would give 25% off. So essentially, we would be able to just pay 25% of the rent, and the landlord would receive a 75% credit from the government on behalf of all the small businesses. So that was a nice help for sure.
Excellent. So again, a lot of not applicable. I wonder if it is that freelancer side of things, which you know, we are a flexible industry, which I think is great in many ways, but it does make it a little bit harder to figure things out right now because it's so scattered and so diverse. But let's celebrate that diversity as much as we can. So James is still missing. So I want to go ahead and introduce Paula, who is the birthday girl. Thank you so much for being with us on your birthday. I think we should, if we could get everybody, who's watching on YouTube to sing a little happy birthday to you. I'll do a parabéns a você in Portuguese to you. Thank you for being with us today. And we'd love to hear your thought. I know that James asked you to talk about a little bit on the capital management. So I'd love to hear a little bit from you about that topic.
Okay, thank you for being part of it. And I'm taking the approach from our venue. I work for the largest venue here in Finland, and I have some feedback from my colleagues from the other Nordic countries. So unfortunately, there has been no industry-specific aid package from government in Finland. So the Finnish government seems not to be aware we exist, even though there have been all these restrictions, and we completely understand why the restrictions are there. So since March 16, we could only hold events up to 10 persons, and since June 1st, we've been able to do events up to 50. And for a large venue like ours, with almost 60,000 square meters, that's not our business case. So really our strength became weakness in a matter of small time. And there have been some schemes from the government, but they have not been specifically for the event industry. So it's basically all industries affected by COVID-19. In the first scheme, we got a grant of 100,000 euros for new product development. And now there's a new scheme where we can get up to 500,000. And for a private person, these are wonderful figures, and we're really grateful for the government for all of that. But for a company our size, where our annual turnover last year was over 59 million euros, and we in a normal year invest a couple millions in our facilities, it's not enough of, it's not making our case any easy. And I also think it's important to mention that we are a completely private company. So we are not owned by the government or municipality. So we are in a way dealing this by ourselves. And in a way I'm going to on Derek's field, but our strategy has basically been to cutting the staff. So we haven't let anybody go, but everybody has been on furlough on different periods. And that's not the end of the world in a country, in a welfare state like Finland. So you have, depending if you're a member of the labor union, you have a good income or you have a basic income by the government. Besides that, we have cut all our investment plans at the time being. So that's the thing. But let's say that last year we put 20 million in our hotel facility, and we were expecting some kind of a different year than this year. It's not easy. But we've been able to avoid any loans so far. So our cash flow, our reserves were good enough. So far we've been only negotiating with the banks with overdraft. So we've been able to extend our accounts with additional funds. And then regarding my colleagues in Oslo, Stockholm, Copenhagen, Gothenburg, they are equally working in large venues that are privately owned. I know that Denmark and Sweden, Denmark especially had event industry specific aid program, and Sweden put together with the companies and the government. So they've been able to pay 95% of the salaries. But in the end, they've been doing the same or taking the same solutions we have been doing. So they have been putting people on the furlough and also been forced to lay off the staff because of the difference between us and them is basically that we have outsourced a lot of services and they have not. So we are still keeping everybody in the loop and really hoping we can keep everybody in the payroll. And in a way, we are not hopefully waiting for a miracle. Some of you maybe have noticed in the news that the countries that have a female leadership have been good on managing COVID-19. And that's a credit I really want to give in our government as well. We have a young female prime minister, and our case on the first wave has been really good, or as good as it possibly could be. So on the first round, we are a country of 5.5 million people. We have 329 casualties, including the elderly homes. And currently our infection rates are between 5 to 15 people. So our wish as a big venue that really lives on the online or offline events is that we can continue what's the plan for the government. And the plan for the government is that already this week we could have events up to over 500, even indoors, if the safety matters are taken into account. And if everything continues as beautifully as it has been until now, and we are not hit by the second wave, so from October 1st, we'll be able to do business as usual. We can't maybe count on that, but that's our big hope. Or there has to be coming some support from the other parts. And that's what I wanted to say.
Perfect, Paula, just in time. So obviously this is not easy news. This is not an easy conversation, but there is some hope there, and you've kept a lot of staff on. So that's really good to hear. And it's great to hear that you're doing events safely, and also that participants are coming to your events, because that's also, part of the challenge. We can make all the safety measures in place, but if people don't feel confident, then we don't have events, right? We'd love to hear from the audience again on this topic of the capital management. So I'm going to ask to go on to the next poll. Again, to vote and to contribute to the polls, go over to slido.com and then type in UOW, or just scan that QR code on your phone and you'll go straight into the poll. And we'd love to hear from you, because you might be in a completely different situation. You might have a completely different type of company to what Paula has just discussed for Messukeskus. Messukeskus, yes, I said it right. It's a tough one for me, in Finland, that she represents. Has your company considered any of the following? And so we're looking for buyouts, we're looking for mergers, we're looking for ideas on companies who may be looking at doing some business or maybe merging with a competitor or a different company to really make the best of the situation and really come out of it stronger. I'm not seeing a lot of activity around this. I'm seeing applicable or don't know. Perhaps, we do have someone looking to actively merge with a weaker competitor and somebody looking to buy out. Okay, so there's a little bit of action here. There's a little bit of buyouts and mergers going on. Excellent. So really interesting to hear that. We have 26 respondents, so there is a significant number there of mergers and buyouts. Very interesting. And as we said earlier, we will share the results of these polls with everybody who participated in this session. So please do see that as a little bit of research as well that we're doing online. And I'd like to, before I move on to the final poll, what I'd like to say is we're going to go on to a Q&A section now. We have about 15 minutes left. So please do enter your questions. I know we already have a few questions in Slido, but you'll notice in Slido, as well as the polls, there is a Q&A section. So please enter your questions there and let me know if you need to address that to anybody specific. But we're going to discuss those questions very, very shortly. So I'd like to move on to the final poll again on the topic of capital management, which is your business going to survive in the next 6 to 12 months? These are anonymous polls, so please be as honest as you can. We'd love to see 100% yes, but obviously this is not an easy situation. So anything that you can share with us will be really, really interesting. James, maybe a comment from you. I mean, these are some tough polls that you created. I mean, you're really asking people to dig deep and share their soul with us, aren't you?
I am, because I think it's important not only for what's happening now, but what might happen next year or the year after that. I think this pandemic is going to have a lot of learnings from it, and the more that we can explore how we've reacted to it, planned to it, is going to actually help us in the future. And just one interesting thing I saw in the news a couple of days ago in terms of mergers. I've seen two major cities in the UK, Bath and Bristol. Their CVBs have actually merged together. So not only are we looking at companies looking how that they're going to deal with this issue, we're also looking at governmental or sort of public-private partnerships also taking measures in order to survive. So I find that very interesting.
Excellent. I'm going to jump in with a question here from Sven, which is actually related directly to Paulo. So before we jump into the questions in Slido, this question here about the numbers, if they are still relevant, or as long as safety rules are taken care of. This is Sven from the Netherlands, saying in the Netherlands, there's no limits anymore. And really, I guess the question is a bigger question of there are these regulations, there are these set numbers that we're seeing in the different governments, but are they relevant? Are they about the safety rules, or are they really more about, do people feel safe? Do people feel that they want to come to events? Paula, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I think that's what we've been working all the time to make sure. I mean, safety has to come first, that people feel safe to come, and that's the case. And that's what the Finnish government has also decided from August 1st. Hopefully we get there.
Excellent. Okay, good to hear. And I am hearing this a lot, a lot of work with governments. Some governments are doing a great job, others not so much. This is not a political commentary. I was just on a webinar earlier about Portugal, my home country, and there are a set of rules and recommendations in Portugal, but they've not been made official, which becomes an issue, right? If you don't have official rules or official kind of government support. So it is very, very challenging. I'm going to hand over now to the questions in Slido. Again, use Slido to enter your questions. And if you like any of the questions that are on the screen, just press that thumbs up and you upvote that question. So that one comes to the top. So I'm going to jump to the one with the most upvotes, which says, how do you persuade cautious corporate clients to make a return to sponsoring and attending in-person events? Aaron, you sound like you'd like to take that one. Go ahead.
I think that as an industry, again, what we overlook is a total amount of data, right? And so when we're talking to clients, it's clear that number one, in Toronto, just to give you an update, right now we're allowed 50 people indoors max. And so, convincing clients to get back to things, whether it be sponsorship or events, clearly the important part of it, and I'll be super brief, is the data. So if you're going to put your corporation sponsorship in front of 50 high-stake people, and you're going to see the return and the spend, then clearly you can convince them. But just to convince someone to do an event because you need the revenue or the money from it, that's not going to happen anymore. And I think people are not just going to do events out of convenience. They're going to do events around data. So I would urge everyone really to get out there and start collecting data. Make sure that if you're going to do an event for a client, that the data suggests that the return is going to be as good or better. So if they did 1,000 people before and can only do 100 now, make sure that those 100 people are going to return a better set of data and you can definitely convince clients to do things.
Excellent, thank you. Would anybody else like to comment on the persuasion of cautious corporate clients? I know this is challenging. We really want to persuade them, you know, when there are the safety regulations and everything in place.
I'd just like to chime in there quickly. I think it's a balance, because what we're going to see is, they say there's pent-up demand in a lot of economies, but I'm not sure if that's just hype or it's actually reality. That's the first thing. The second thing is, cash-rich companies are going to say, well, we need to stick our neck out and we need to activate our brands. So they will be spending, but then it's going to be the companies that don't have that cash flow that are going to be, well, we just need some sales, but we can't actually afford to go out and chase them. So we'll see less people going to exhibition booths in that case, and maybe less brand activations. I think Derek will probably have a better idea in terms of association and, you know, those member events.
Yeah, I was just going to add, so this question is actually twofold from the association side. The sponsoring element, I think, is one that really resonates within the space that we're currently in, specifically in focusing on the virtual components, because there are more opportunities within this space to really leverage that with in comparison to in-person events. As it relates directly to attending the events. Now that's something completely different. And back what Aaron was mentioning around the collecting the data and ensuring that you're making educated decisions based off of the need and desire for the actual participants to be in that physical setting. Because what we're seeing primarily in the association world is, even though the organizations may want to have in-person events and that need for the bottom line of their budgets and to continue with that historical perspective, many of the attendees aren't leaving their homes, aren't leaving their communities. And so organizations are having to, again, reimagine the experiences that they used to plan continuously on an annual basis, and are having to maybe look to plan more regional-based events, and again, restructure the types of opportunities that they present for their participants to educate, to network and idea exchange.
Great. Maybe Ping, would you like to comment from the China perspective? I also see a question that popped up about how many people are allowed to meet in China at this point in Beijing.
Yeah. I just mentioned in my presentation, and 500 as a maximum for this moment. And actually, each city or each area, they have their own policy. And you know, in May, in some of the low risk area, and they organized really big events there, and such as auto show and for exhibitions for 3 days, and with many visitors and attendees. I don't know how many, but many. I don't know many, because it's a lot of costs. So that depends on different areas, different
I'm
cities.
sorry, Ping, but your sound is really breaking up. I'm having real difficulties trying to.
Can you hear me better now?
A little bit better?
Is better now?
Not particularly. I think it's an internet issue.
Hello? Can you hear me?
I'm going to move on to the next question. We'll come back to you, Ping, if we can get a little bit better connectivity with you.
Okay.
Just wanted to check on this question here. And Morgan, we've talked about this already a little bit, which is
It's better?
That is much better, Ping.
I can hear you very
maybe
well.
conclude your point. Yes.
Okay. Anyway, in Beijing, 500.
Excellent.
Okay.
Good to hear. Good.
You hear me?
Thank you. Yes, I think it's much better now. Thank you for working on that. We're talking here about a question from Morgan Connicher. How do you see the role of contractors, freelancers in this new event industry? Obviously, this is, you know, big roles for contractors and freelancers already. And in the, I guess, the new normal, I hate to use that word, but let's talk about the future. How do you predict that relationship would evolve as we start to ramp up I think maybe Aaron, I think you probably have a lot of experience with contractors and freelancers. Would you be able to share some light, look at your crystal ball and tell us what you see?
So there's a couple of things. First of all, I'm loving all of these questions. They're all around kind of event production and scaling events and stuff. And clearly, you know, as a company, that's what Fifth Element does. And so, you know, for me, it's going to be really interesting. And I think some of the things that are going to happen are going to kind of define how freelancers go forward. There will be clearly an abundance of people available for employment. And so I think part of the determination on freelancers will be how governments approach subsidies for salaries and hiring going forward. I think, you know, as companies who have some cash or have some stocks or want to ramp up a little faster, it's smart to get people on board full time and get them working on your brand and working on clients. And companies who are able to faster than smaller companies will clearly reap the benefits. The other challenge will, of course, be that, you know, we're going to look at some very smart people who have lost some very good jobs, unfortunately, in our industry. And what are they going to do? Are they going to be willing to freelance, or are they going to do what's traditionally been done in our industry and just go out on your own and open up a company? So they're going to not necessarily want to freelance and give their expertise to a lot of companies to grow, but rather keep their expertise to themselves and try and steal away a piece of that pie. If that happens too much, we're going to fragment our industry a lot more, and the availability of freelancers may not be quite what we think, but rather, you know, those people who are highly skilled, who don't want to find another job and don't want to, you know, give their expertise to a few companies, will take those 1, 2, 3 clients a year and potentially work from home, which is, again, back to the premises question. And it's going to make it a lot more challenging for freelancers going forward. They're going to have to kind of pick whether they want to be on their own or employees. But I think the freelance market may actually be impacted in a negative way because of that.
So you're saying is, do you think there'll be less freelancers available?
I think there'll just be a big flood to the market. And I think those people are either going to choose to get jobs, because jobs will be available. Companies have let go of a lot of people, and there'll be a lot of transition in employment. So I think either, you know, a lot of those freelancers will have to choose between taking jobs and helping companies grow again, or becoming solopreneurs and getting their own clients. I think the idea of companies, you know, like mine, bringing in more and more freelancers to replace either permanent employees that we've lost probably isn't scalable. So we're going to want to ramp up as fast as we're allowed to and bring in staff long-term to help us grow at a faster rate. And freelancers just don't allow you to do that.
So I'll jump in here, because I think the answer to all that is actually falls within kind of my realm within the association management group. And so when you think about association management companies being able to fulfill those voids within the staffing needs within any organization, whether they be event related or strategic planning, the leadership, the marketing, the communications, et cetera, that industry is able to really come in and really help elevate these organizations that have these voids. And I think as we start heading into the fall, the organizations that are starting to actually resurface from all of this, all of the furloughs and layoffs, will see that they have these holes that are needing to be filled. And then the association management companies actually, I think, come in and be able to serve kind of those needs instantaneously. And a lot of these contractors are employed by these association management companies. So I think that's kind of the cycle that we see moving forward.
Excellent. Ping, Paula, anything you'd like to contribute to the contractors, freelancers side of the conversation? Do you see it changing after the pandemic?
Okay, so I can hear you, right?
Oh, it's still a little bit choppy, I'm afraid.
It's better? Okay, you know, in China, for the state-owned companies, they don't have any freelancers. So everyone is formal employee. And for the private company like China Star, we do have freelancers. And so actually, now I prefer to work with freelancers, and much more efficient and flexibility. And so, but however, I still keep almost the whole team, and I never fire anyone. I still believe that we'll be busy with virtual events, and we need really to train them to adapt to the new technology and the new model of the business. So this will happen in China, but more and more companies, they like to use freelancers instead of the formal employees.
Paula, any comments from your end? I don't know how much you work with freelancers and contractors,
Oh,
but I think
the whole business is based on outsourcing and freelancers. So I'm afraid we will have more freelancers to be in the market and people moving maybe other businesses as well. It all depends how it all evolves. But the situation is a bit, can be very good very soon, or but going the way around.
Well, if you allow me, I think this sounds like we've talked about the future of work and work being more flexible and more, elastic, adapting to demand. And it sounds a little bit like online events, like we've just had to adapt very, very quickly. We've kind of taken what maybe would have been 10 or 20 years of development of the business world and put it into 4 or 5 months, which is incredibly fast. So it's very, very interesting to see this develop so quickly. Now, I'm not saying it's positive or negative, but it is what it is. We are absolutely on the hour. We're actually a minute over. I wanted to maybe go on to one last question, just so everybody could maybe contribute. And it's a little bit, of course, a little bit of a future, crystal ball kind of question. I'm going to mix two of the questions that have come up that have been mostly upvoted. And the first one is the one about brands have become accustomed to virtual events, which have less costs. And do you think that in the business world, they're going to scale down live events in a post-pandemic era? So we're talking about that hopeful exit from a pandemic in a return to live events. Virtual events or online events have less costs. Do you think that businesses are going to scale down live events? And then Rui also asks a very interesting question here about events falling more under the PR umbrella. And do you think that this is more important because of the communications mix, that kind of PR becoming much more important to events? So I know these questions are a little bit different, but I guess if we could go around one last time and maybe ask everybody to look at their crystal ball and say, hey, how do you see it happening in the future? Are we going to just go for online events because they're cheaper and they're instant-ish? And is there more or less PR involved? Maybe start with you, James. I know you're also commentating on a lot of these topics, so maybe start with you, and we can go around and get one last little comment from everybody.
I think these are excellent questions, and I can see one of them is from one of our Westminster University alumni, Rui. So thanks for that. What I'd like to just set the scene before you guys answer this question is what we do as events people, especially in the corporate world, is we look to influence behavior change. So we do product launches to create behavior change. We do conferences to create behavior change. We do all sorts of events, team building, etc. And it's all about behavior change. But the case here is what we've actually happened to us as societies is behavior change has been forced upon us. So we haven't adopted change behavior readily. This has been forced on us. So this is going to have a huge influence on us, because if you look at just the high street, for example, or shopping areas, people are finding the behavior change to online shopping less frictionless, more sustainable. So we're going to have these problems in the high street or in malls and places like that. So, everybody's saying hybrid events are the future, and I very much agree because of that behavior change. So I'll hand over to the rest of the ones, but I just want to keep that in mind.
Absolutely. I know we're a little over time. I hope you can stick around for a few more minutes. Anyone would like to take the question? Look in your crystal ball and share. Aaron, over to you.
For me, the industry is long overdue for a maturation period. And so we need to understand that, those things, whether it's belonging to PR or whatever else, as an industry, we need to grow up a little bit, and we need to understand that we get to control that dialogue. And so if we want to rely on PR companies to be able to to own the dialogue with the client, and then for us to just be able to produce experiences, and that's what we can do. Or we can decide to own those campaigns, own those experiences, and lead out and reach out to clients using the pandemic as a reason for change, and say, we want to start talking more about campaigns and less about parties. And so how do we use our skills and expertise to grow companies to be able to control the dialogue around how an event is launched, the PR around an event, the actual event, and then post-event? And how do we use our skill set to be able to create experiences that drive people to a particular event, whether it be online, live, or hybrid, and then what the dialogue is after that? And I think as organizations, we really need to we need to understand that we don't have to wait for marketing, advertising, or PR. Those people talk to clients right away and say, we'll do that for you. And then they come to us for all of the work. And so I think it's time that we really step up as an industry and say, we want to own that creative conversation. We want to own that dialogue, and we want to own that context. And we want to start creating campaigns that matter, working alongside PR, advertising, and marketing, and not underneath them as a white labeled industry.
Very interesting. Ping, would you like to comment?
I think after the pandemic and the hybrid events will get more and more popular. So now it's already in China. It's very popular in China. So I'm thinking about the ICA Congress in Kaohsiung in Taiwan. That will be in November. It will be the hybrid. And the registration actually started today, if I remember well. So probably a lot of Chinese members from mainland China will register for this hybrid events, you know. So we cannot go there, but we can join the events from mainland China. And, you know, in China, we are so big, and it's very costly for people to transport from one city to another city. So hybrid will be the future in China.
Okay. Thank you, Ping. Paula, Derek, there's a lot of conversation on YouTube about hybrid. I'd love to bring up some of these comments, but we're really running out of time. I think I'll just bring up Sven's comment, because I think that is quite funny. Hybrid events are the future. Sven would challenge that comment. So any of the panelists, Paula, I don't know if you think that it's the future, if you'd like to challenge it or disagree with Sven?
Sure. We all prepared. So all the venues, we have built our studios and used the time to get on that level. And certainly we believe in that, and still really much hope and believe on the face-to-face meetings, but also for the international conferences, I'm looking at, it's called the democratization of the information. So our clients have reached so much bigger clients, but still are eager to organize the face-to-face meetings. So I believe in the hybrid and how to challenge that. I would like to hear Sven's comment on that instead of challenging us.
Well, Miguel, I'll actually jump in and challenge that and say that I think that virtual is our future. For so long, we've kept virtual in the back seat and compared to the in-person experiences that we've been planning as event professionals. But now this pandemic has helped our industry open our eyes and evolve quicker in allowing virtual to take the spotlight. What we're seeing now because of this is the opportunities within this realm for sustainability, to broaden our reach, to connect people in new ways, and even to create different monetization strategies within the scales of our organizations that didn't previously exist. So when we think about what the future is, I think that virtual does allow us to really propel our communities, our organizations, and our professions in a way that was not possible in the past. Hybrid events are, I think, definitely a main part of this, but you can't have a hybrid event if you don't have a virtual component. And a virtual component that is that's strong, that it's engaging, and that truly drives the member reach and input throughout it all. So
Excellent. Very valid points. I'd like to bring up a poll from Paul Cook, which I think maybe wraps up some of these ideas nicely. As in the event sector, is it not our responsibility to make use of all event types at our disposal to help our clients, rather than say one is better than another? I think that's an excellent point. If we're really truly being partners to our clients and to the people that want to run events, the event sector may need to just have all the options and offer an honest menu of choices. Like, if you want to do a hybrid event, if you want to do a virtual event, these are the advantages, these are the disadvantages, and this is what we can do for you. And I think that's an excellent place to be.
The events industry has never been forced to prove it. So I think in that question, Paul is clearly saying we need to start proving what tools we're going to use and the value that we bring to clients. And clearly every tool, it should be at our discretion. And as long as we're able to prove why it makes sense, clients will be willing to spend money and get back to work.
Absolutely. I think that's an excellent point. Ladies, gentlemen, I think let's wrap up there. I think this has been a really interesting discussion. And just by looking at all the comments on YouTube, I think we have plenty to have maybe another 3 or 4 of these sessions. So I'd love to have you back. James, I'm going to put up on the screen the cover of the amazing report and also the link to where people can find it. So that we can all enjoy it and get people to download it. I think there's some great research there. And I know that you're going to continue to do research, and you may use some of the polls that we've done here and then go forward with more research in this area. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. It's been really fascinating. I didn't realize that everybody was in a different country, and I think that's amazing. And it just shows some of the advantages of doing online events. I'd love to have this conversation on a stage or over dinner with you sometime, but this is pretty good too. And I think I enjoy doing these online gatherings. Any last words from you, James? I know you set everything up, so I wanted to give you the option to close it out for us.
The only closing that I'd like to give is thank you to everybody that helped us with the survey in the first place. From GMID Virtual. Thank you very much to Ping from Beijing, to Paula from Helsinki, from Derek in Washington, to Aaron in
Toronto.
And obviously you, Miguel, for gluing the whole thing together in such a great way. And and thank you for people for tuning in. That's great.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure. See you soon. Make sure you download the report and let's continue the conversation. There's some great comments, some great questions. Who knows? We'll be back. James, it's up to you to set up another one. So let us know when you want us back and we'll join in.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you. Yeah, 再见，拜拜。